Firstly, let me say, I'm sorry I can't be with you to recognise my best New Zealand friend, Doug King, and Petra King. I met Doug early in 1990 when I came to work at Ruatura. Doug worked as an entomologist and he was an expert already in phylloxera, and as it turns out, the year I arrived, there was an outbreak of phylloxera in Brisbane, and we planned together a survey of the spread of phylloxera. I was responsible for measuring vines, and Doug looked at the spread, and we had a third co-operator. His name is Peter Stevens. Peter was responsible for the aerial infrared image. So it was a very successful project to help growers understand what they had to do. And the answer is very simple. They need to replant their vineyards. This work that Doug did at Ruatura brought great credit to New Zealand. Firstly, and very importantly, Doug and his team established that machines spread phylloxera in vineyards. Can you imagine Doug and his two technicians with a hose washing down an enormous grapevine harvester to find an almost microscopic insect? But they did. There was a second major finding that was of more importance actually in California than it was in Australia or New Zealand. Doug exchanged phylloxera from New Zealand with a colleague named Willing in Germany, and they discovered that, interestingly, the phylloxera in Europe is different from the one in New Zealand, and the phylloxera biotype in New Zealand and Australia comes from California, whereas the biotype in Europe comes from Eastern America. And guess what? When Californians introduced vines, grafted vines from New York State in the 1990s, they found that phylloxera attacked their vines on the rootstock AXR. So they were two major findings made by Doug. We spent much time together at Ruatura. He and I and a friend from Auckland climbed Mount Taranaki which was a big excursion, and it was quite a big thrill. He'd always loved Hawke's Bay, and he had an opportunity to have a job in Hawke's Bay as a research scientist in viticulture, and he began there in January 2006. And part of the deal was that I was to work with Doug and his technician, Dan McClellan. We would do research together, and we published several papers. I had this long letter, private letter from Doug, explaining to me his feelings, his deep feelings, and that he wanted to make the transition. I then, of course, had Petra as my best friend, and as I've reviewed emails, we had many exchanges to do with our work together, looking at leaf and crop removal, and also studying and understanding soil variability. I was impressed how Doug was so brave to make the transition in such a public forum as the IT with staff and students, growers involved. But as I saw, everyone respected Petra for her bravery and her candour, and so many people were carried along. It was such a shame with the Parkinson, and I witnessed over several years how difficult her life became, how very difficult, and how brave she was living with Bonnie and putting up with that. And, well, we lost Petra recently, as you know, and I'm very sorry I can't be there with you to share my memories. I hope this helps. Bye.